Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl. Two quick things at the top of the show. First off, you've no doubt seen the news out of Western North Carolina. There are so many impacted by the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, including breweries and brewery employees. The North Carolina Craft Brewers Guild is working on several responses, and you can learn more on how to help them by visiting ncbeer.org. And also, GABF is coming up soon. So if you plan to be in Colorado, here's a way to make your Great American Beer Festival experience even greater. Check out the Denver Rare Beer Tasting on October 10th. It's an incredible afternoon of beer passion featuring an all-star list of craft breweries pouring amazing brews to benefit Pints for Prostates. This is a bucket list experience for a great cause. You'll try beers you won't find elsewhere and meet the men and women who brewed them. For more information about the Denver Rare Beer Tasting, visit pintsforprostates.org. This week on the show, it's the first of two panels recorded live during the Schilling Brewery's Oktoberfest held last weekend in Littleton, New Hampshire. In a minute, you're going to hear from Monday Night Brewing, Goldfinger Brewing, and Everywhere Beer Company. First, please go visit allaboutbeer.com. There, you can find original articles, reviews, news, insights, and other podcasts. Listen to shows like Brewer to Brewer and the All About Beer podcast simply by searching All About Beer wherever you listen to shows. You can also follow All About Beer on Instagram, Threads, X, and Facebook at All About Beer. And to keep up with all of the smoked beer news and releases, make sure you check out This Week in Rauch Beer by searching the group on Facebook or follow at TW Rauch Beer on X, Threads, and Instagram. Glassware and apparel is available on allaboutbeer.com/merch. This show and all of the work we do, it's supported by you. Please go visit patreon.com/allaboutbeer. A few dollars goes a long way to help fund writers, photographers, creators, and editors. And if you'd like to learn more about advertising and supporting All About Beer, please email us at info@allaboutbeer.com. Last week in New Hampshire, amid the revelry of the Schilling Oktoberfest, a festival I'll say should be on your radar for next year, I got together with some of the brewer owners from around the country to record this conversation. There's a lot of uncertainty in the industry these days, and folks are trying to figure out the path forward in real time. Talking with and listening to smart people offers up a lot of perspective. So I'm glad to welcome this trio this week. Peter Kiley is brewmaster and co-owner of Monday Night Brewing. He's an award-winning brewmaster, winemaker, and distiller from Atlanta, Georgia. From Monday Night's inception, Peter's creative vision, recipe development, and multifaceted approach to alcohol production have set the groundwork for the brewery's worldwide notoriety. Kiley is a founding member of the MBAA Georgia chapter, a member of the Hop Quality Group, a published scientific author, and has presented at both the World Brewing Congress and the Craft Brewers Conference. Tom Beckmann is the owner and head brewer of Goldfinger Brewing in Downers Grove, Illinois. Upon graduating from the World Brewing Academy Master's Brewer Diploma Program through the Siebel Institute of Technology and the Domens Academy in Munich, Germany, Tom became a production brewer at Lagunitas and later worked several years as a pub brewer at Emmett's Brewing Company. He established Goldfinger, an exclusively lager beer producer, in the summer of 2020, and he has an acute experience with lager brewing as well as what it's like to scale up small lager-centric craft brewery. And Jeremy Grinkey is the co-founder at Everywhere Beer Company. He spent 20 years in the alcohol industry, having spent half that time making wine on the central coast of California and the remainder of that time managing beer production. Before co-founding Everywhere with a few industry colleagues, he was the director of production at the brewery. Everywhere Beer was founded in 2022 and is focused on growing its community and delivering fresh beer, as well as esoteric offerings to its dedicated fans. This is a great group, and you're going to learn a lot. From Schilling in Littleton, New Hampshire, here's our conversation. Peter, I want to start with you because there is... So right now there is a lot of talk about contractions in the industry and folks wondering, okay, how do I consolidate? How do I make things secure in my four walls in my small space that I have right now? I get a lot of press releases from Monday Night about, hey, we're opening up a new tap room or we've just expanded and all that. And it seems very purposeful, and it seems like it's part of an overall plan that you all have. But from your perspective in Monday Night right now, how are you managing growth in what I think most people are calling troubled times right now?
It's a good question.
That's why I'm here.
I think we're managing growth right now by actually shrinking.
Okay.
We have been very intentional about who we employ and why we employ them. And I think that as we've gone through this, I hate this word of like optimization or being dynamic, but there's definitely certain things that we did out of comfort versus out of necessity. And then when we open new spaces, so often, especially within our teams, people are like, I thought we're getting this one message about how we have to be more intentional about this or how we need to be like right-sizing this part of the business, but then we go and we open up another thing. And oftentimes, and I'm going to say this just so people can hear it, that is not our money. We work with a lot of different developers in a lot of different cities, and we want to help be a part of those communities. And oftentimes, there are a lot of economic opportunities to go be a part of it. So whether it's TI, tenant investment, or any of these other things. And as we grow, early in our, I would say probably about 2017, my wife who's here, Rachel, who's our COO, and we very early made the decision not to only put all of our eggs in the basket of wholesale. We wanted to be also, in a way, a hospitality business. We could reach more people, have more unique identities, and kind of be a part of our communities more meaningfully if we expanded outside of just Georgia. So luckily we made that decision because now it's a part of a plan of growth, but it's also very much so part of a plan, at least from 2017, of survival.
I want to get to Jeremy and Tom in a second, but it struck me as to who to employ and why to employ them as well. There's a lot of people who are passionate about beer these days. There's a lot of, there's a lot of people looking for jobs on the market these days. Why was that something you brought up early on in that question as to who's within your organization?
We are not a family. I'm sure anyone that's been on LinkedIn and have read words from thought leaders, which is a bunch of bullshit. Sorry. We're a professional sports team, right? And taking that mentality of like, what do you actually do? What is your purpose? How do you serve not just the mission, but the business? And that can't always be mutually exclusive. Sometimes they're different. So really it's just figuring out, if someone wants to be here to learn, that's great. That's kind of like a baseline minimum. But really, when we employ someone, we expect them to do that job uniquely as well as they can. And if that's not the mentality that they're going to apply towards our needs, then sometimes like it's not a club. It's not a place where you're just going to go make mistakes on someone else's dollar. We have a lot of employees. There's a lot of people that are counting on us. So my tolerance for bullshit right now is at an all-time low. But at the same time, I don't want to create a place that is like unfun, unfriendly, and kind of difficult to grow in. But everyone's there for a reason. And I tell people, character is something that we cannot train. We are not your parents. We're not the military. So if you got character, if you're on our team, you already passed the character check. And after that, it's kind of like, let's grow and let's go. And outside of that, if you aren't doing those two things and your character sucks or it kind of changes throughout the path, then I don't know.
Okay.
There's a lot of breweries that are hiring right now.
That's Jeremy, let me go down to you because you've worked for other people and now you work for yourself. And I'm curious as to what you learned from your previous experiences before you got to where you are now. Was it a running checklist of, well, one day I'm going to do it this way and these guys don't know? Was it helpful having the background that you've had? Is it different than you expected with your brewery?
Yeah,
Loaded question all around. Yeah.
Excuse me. A lot of good questions there. Let me first start by saying I thought this room would be noisier and you guys would actually be drinking beer and talking to each other. So I'm actually surprised to see everybody's attention up here. One thing I've learned is I work too hard previous to opening my own company. And it's actually something I just kind of shared here with one of the panelists before. I think I work too hard. I'm very passionate about creating products in the alcohol industry, and looking back on how hard I work now, I'm like, man, I was working for somebody else, clocking just as many hours as I am now. That being said, I don't think I would have gotten where I've gotten if I wasn't that type of employee. But now owning a business, I realize that finding somebody like that is really hard to do, and hiring with intention is the goal, but you never know really what you're going to get and how dedicated somebody will be. That being said, all of that dedication that I had has really primed me to continue that checklist that I already was working on. I'm doing the same things every day that I was doing before. The thing is now I've somehow figured out how to do a 120-hour week instead of a 110-hour week, and that's just like every time I wake up, I'm thinking about what we're trying to do. Our little business is in its infancy. We just celebrated our second year being open, which has been great. And the challenge in our business is not making beer. It's not selling beer. It's not talking about a brand. It's not building a brand. It's not getting the right T-shirt and somebody to wear it. It's actually operating the business. That's the hard part. That's the learning thing that we're in the middle of right now, and just trying to figure out how do we plan for a future. We just heard about intention and direct to consumer versus wholesale, and we're trying to balance who we're going to be and looking at some leases and contracts that we have signed that we're trying to open spots, and how is that going to work, and how is that going to impact what our original goal was with wholesale, and how I'm going to try to hold on to wholesale as well.
Is there something to be said for right now, because again, with breweries closing, with folks who got into it maybe without having that experience that you did, and it's like, well, I was a home brewer for half an hour, and now my parents are going to fund me to buy a brewery, and that's me being an asshole, but I know a bunch of folks who did that.
Sure.
There's something to be said for working for somebody else's brewery beforehand, to learning the different parts of the business, to be paying attention to it. In your mind, as we look forward into what comes in the next 5 or so years, should some of the people who are actually thinking about opening now go and get that experience? This can be a jump ball for any of you, but go and get that experience working someplace else to really fully understand. And I'm not talking about like a 6-month internship or not. Okay, Tom, go ahead. I can hear you all right. Yeah.
I would say that getting experience prior to opening is invaluable. I worked for 2 breweries prior to opening Goldfinger. Yeah. And particularly on the production side of things, I saw all of the mistakes of the layouts that were created at the 2 breweries that I had previously worked at.
Sure.
It also gave me a sense of eventually if we are fortunate enough to grow to a point where I need other people to support the production side, how comfortable, how convenient, how nice is their experience going to be working for me as well. So down to the number of feet between one tank and the other tank. I worked in very tight quarters versus really large spaces. All of that stuff went into our planning, and I still managed to fuck it up. But probably not nearly as badly as I would have had I not previously worked at other breweries.
But wasn't there a time though in the industry where growth was so important, and we're going to take on the big guys, and fuck the big guys, and we're going to show, and it was just anybody who wanted to get into it. There was maybe even just from the top down of sure, get into the industry, make your mark, go for them, all of that. And I'm wondering if now the next thing is just no, maybe learn to crawl before you walk. Do you all get calls from people who are oh, I'm thinking about starting my own brewery, or customers in your tap room or things like that was happening 5 or so years? And has your advice changed as to what you might give them now versus back then?
We get fewer.
Okay, smart.
There's a local community college to us, and they have a incubator type program. So there still are students. We host some tastings and stuff for them. There still are students of that program that are interested in opening. And I try not to be the downer, because I was a dreamer, continue to be a dreamer, and of course a different climate for the industry. and I don't want to be the one to burst somebody's bubble. I just try to give a response that's more informed of what I'm seeing, and typically I'll let them ask more of the questions, and then kind of help guide them toward making a more informed decision.
Peter, I see you nodding along.
Yes, I mean, I think that I'm not here to kill anyone's dreams, and in fact, I've seen a lot of people that have done amazing work by not listening to anyone.
Okay.
And they just go out there and you're like, fuck yeah, let's go. But at the same time, what I do now, which is much more intentional, is that if they're open to it, I'm like, show me your business plan. Talk to me about how you're going to raise money. Talk to me about what, like, ROF, return on flavor, is what we all do as brewers. But I'm like, ROI is more important, right? And that's not really a thing for a long time. Like, especially in those early years you spoke about, it was constantly us, at least for us, we were reinvesting. Constantly trying to grow to get to this point that now is imaginary. So yeah, I mean, I think that brewing brings a lot of dreamers, and I think it's a beautiful thing about our industry. But at the same time, I'm like, you got to dream responsibly. So I am here to be your sober driver as you dream, and I'm like, whoa, that's a cliff. Don't do that.
Do any of you feel, if you're agreeing with Peter was just saying, do either of you feel that, like, if you had somebody saying dream responsibly at a different point in your careers, that you might have been different, that things might have been different for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty adamant about doing this.
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody could stop me, but then it would, since I consider myself an honest person, when I would talk to people who are going to invest, I wouldn't feel so confident in the stuff that I thought prior to talking to somebody who actually knew what they were talking about. In fact, that happened to me 3 or 4 times just in our business plan. Just, reading things in this like pie in the sky kind of business plan. I present it to somebody who poses some challenges, makes me go do more research, and then I find out that I was totally wrong about something.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I obviously stopped my dream, but it definitely helped guide.
Jeremy, when somebody shows up at your brewery these days and they're like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, what do you tell them? Yeah,
I mean, just for me, I'm a pretty bootstrap guy. I've spent a lot of time building myself and trying to become who I am. So when anybody has the guts to ask me for my opinion, like I'm gonna give them exactly what I think, and they could be, you could be in your first year of brewing and be at a small brew pub and be the assistant brewer and have your sights set on being the head brewer and feeling like you're just a month or 2 away from getting to do your own recipes. And you could come to me and tell me that same story and say, I'm really excited, like, what do you think I should do? And I'm going to tell them, like, you should probably quit your job. Here's 5 breweries in your area you could go work at. Go ask them if you could work overnights. Can you be on the night shift? And he's, I don't want to do that. I'm like, well, then, you don't really want to do this. So,
right.
Like, these are the things you need to do to be able to put yourself in a position where you will be a leader someday. But if there's tons of people out there that have been successful moving from a homebrew kit into building their own brewery. I mean, a lot of them. I mean, there's more that haven't been. And I think that experience, gives you an opportunity to solidify a foundation, and then you can start building your career in the beer business. You may be surprised to find out that you brew beer for 5 years, and your 10-year plan is you don't even touch grain or hops or tanks or chemicals anymore. I don't do any of the stuff I used to do, and there's people in the room I could see that are in the same place. Like these careers that we build aren't necessarily visible from, the foundation, and you start building it, but you got to build on something. And in my opinion, especially when it's a production employee, when they're trying to skirt responsibilities and like, well, I want what's easiest for me, that's a big red flag.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of hiring and unfortunately some firing too. And it's not easy to find people who are willing to do the work that they said they were going to do. Everybody wants to be the quarterback, and you need a good line. You need people there, and so sometimes you got to hire somebody, and it's like you really are going to clean tanks, and they might not even hear that. They're just thinking, oh no, I'm going to be the last guy that was here was only here a year, and now he's the head brewer. You know? And that doesn't always translate.
Tom, you're one of a handful of breweries in the country right now solely focused on lagers, and it's a cool trend that I know all of the nerds in the room and all of the drinkers like. There's a fun romantic vision of that. But I think deeper down, there's also something to be said for understanding the importance of a niche, understanding the importance of strength, understanding, we're going to do this one thing well. I'm saying the McDonald's model, but I don't mean that it's a cheap hamburger at the same price. But like, it's we know what we're going to be. We're not going to be, doing Chinese food. We're not going to be doing, kebabs. We're not going to be doing, we're just going to do hamburgers and fries, and we're going to do that well. What has been, obviously, in the industry and through curious drinkers that care about these types of things, there's a lot of love that comes your way. What's it like inside your four walls of the business model meeting reality these days? Is it as fun as we all think it is?
Yes. Yeah, it is. Well, I promised myself before we opened the brewery, that I wouldn't start brewing something that I couldn't get 100% behind.
Okay.
I worked at a brew pub before that, and I used to brew all sorts of styles, and I remember brewing a couple of styles and knowing that I wouldn't be able to brew it again for another year. So anything that I would learn from that batch, I'd have to wait a year to do. And if I didn't take good enough notes, then I forgot what I messed up the previous time. And so there is definitely that advantage of being very focused on a limited selection of beers, on particular styles, because we're constantly brewing them. We're constantly able to tweak them. And for me, that's my passion. That's what I love to do. So on the side, we say the brewing side of the glass, because we have a glass that separates our tap room from the brewery. I'm very happy with what we're doing there. In terms of the tap room side and how that's being received, thankfully, we're in a city in Chicago and the surrounding area that is historically very lager-centric. We kind of got away from that because we're situated between two of the largest breweries in the world, between Milwaukee and St. Louis. So that was kind of what had been defining lager in Chicago for a while.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like we had to convince people what lager was. We are historically a very German, Polish town. I mean, it was actually a pretty easy sell to the market.
Okay.
So I'd say all in all, great. I mean, I don't want to get into the stuff that's not so great, but like the fact that we have to spend way more money just to get more tanks because we lager our beers, and
Sure.
we have probably quadruple the number of tanks that a brewery who's making probably triple the volume has in the ale space.
All right, but so this is sort of a jump ball for everybody, right? Because like quality takes money, quality takes commitment, doing things without compromise. The word intention gets thrown around a lot, especially in settings like this, because every brewer that's pouring here is doing something their way and hopefully doing it without compromise, and are really focused in on why they're doing what they're doing. And intention, I think, is a great word. Great word for it. So, Peter, to you then, when you are, and we were talking before we went on about, like you have a large program and you have a whole bunch of different beers that you're out there, and you have a bunch of different locations. What does intentional brewing mean for a place like Monday Night?
So I think the way to retain talent is you got to let them creatively express themselves. And that has to be earned, but come a certain point, you have to let them go. So with our team, I do this really funny thing where I make them write a press release about the beer before I even see any bit of the recipe.
Okay.
I'm like, tell me why this beer should exist. And if it's not exciting, if I'm not like, oh, damn, that's going to sound delicious,
Yeah.
then I'm like, okay, let's go back to it. Because if you can't get me excited, if you can't even get yourself excited enough,
to write something that is
to like talk about the beer, and that also goes and it helps sales and marketing before it even gets created. I'm like, all right, this is the vision. But really from there, I mean, in Atlanta, there's been many times from my personal journey where I've been kind of like bummed that I couldn't just go and master something. I couldn't go dedicate myself to one thing. And I'm thankful that Atlanta, just being as diverse and transient as it is, that it's pushed us to create offerings for all kinds of people. We don't have a dedicated community. And I think I've grown to love that over time. It's become a part of our identity. But still, that's the same thing about hiring a diverse team with different skill sets, is that it kind of comes a little bit easy. I found myself now as our brewmaster a little bit more like executive brewing, kind of like you talked about. I'm not touching as many things, but I also believe in not democratizing creativity. Like the greatest books are written by one person.
Yeah.
So I view myself more as an editor, if not like an author at times, which I still love creating beer recipes. But when you have a group of people that are doing that well, and they're just focusing on different areas, and then taking opportunities, whether it be seasonally or stuff like that, to where we can express an idea and storytell through the liquids that we create through our 6 different tap rooms. And I think we're in 4 states for wholesale. So some things are like, LTO, some things are tap room only, some things get graduated to core, but we have a lot of avenues for creativity. But at the end of the day, like, not everyone's contribution's equal. And so I want to make sure that when they come correct.
Yeah. Jeremy, same question to you though on the putting in the money for the infrastructure, putting in the money for the creativity aspect, and doing stuff without compromise, doing stuff with intention, right? Because there's no shortage of breweries that are out there these days, but it strikes me that if you're at a festival and pouring like this, that your peers see you as doing something that's important, doing something that rises above, we're just tracing trends or something like that. So from your perspective.
Yeah, so the word, just to start off with the word intention, and what that means to everywhere. That's my brewery, just in case I didn't put that out there before, that I founded with the 3 fabulous partners of mine. Intention for us is like fresh beer. Like that's our big thing. We want our beer to be as fresh as possible. And
so give me the time frame on that, because fresh is one of those buzzwords where it's like the mountains turn blue, so it's like cold enough. So
the IPA that we have here and the fest beer that we have here, the IPA was canned 10 days ago and the fest beer was canned 5 days ago.
And that to you, just to be clear, like that to you means that it's tasting exactly how you want it to be,
as close
for this crowd.
Yeah, as close to that as possible. And the reason that that's been such a big deal for us, and one of the things that we knew we needed to do when we founded our company, was that I come from being known for making wild beers and barrel aged stouts and stuff, and I think it's really easy for people just to assume that that's what our company is going to be. But our company is going to be like fresh West Coast IPA, hazy beer, lagers, and seltzers for the tap rooms. And that's the other part of intention, is having a list that, as we talked about earlier, having a list that is inclusive of everybody that walks into your tap room, and understanding that people like to drink low ABV, people like to drink barrel aged beer, people like to drink smoothie seltzers, they like agua fresca type seltzers. We wanted to lean into giving people a wide berth of like what we could do, and then being listeners of them, and trying to figure out who they actually want us to be as a brewery and a company that they visit. We would have been just totally happy if, although hazy IPA isn't our thing, if everybody decided we were one of the best hazy IPA brewers in the world and they wanted to line up outside our door, we'd be making a ton of hazy IPA.
Right, but how long? But in reality, how long do those breweries last in being the darling?
Yeah,
right?
I don't know how long they last, but I do know that if you could find something that people like, you could start bringing them into the fold of everything else. For us, that's been West Coast IPA.
Yeah.
West Coast IPA in Southern California, and specifically in Orange County right now, is kind of the king. And there's a lot of really great breweries that are kind of redefining, what that style is, and some breweries down in San Diego too. And we're just tickled to be even included in that group of breweries. For for me to go to a bar and see our beer, right next to a North Park beer and right next to a Highland Park beer and a Green Cheek beer is like, that to me is like my heart flutters a little bit. Those are our cohorts there that are kind of pushing that style. But the other part of intention is and balancing the whole program is that we do need to make barrel-aged stouts, and we do need to make some of these things. And we did start a club so that we could build this community of people that are fans of everywhere that we can host and that we could turn into, really our stewards of the brands that will go out there and share our beer with other people and talk about everywhere. And it's really a great thing. This is my first time in New Hampshire. It's my first time north of New York. And I already met like 20 people outside that have had our beer before, and they've had it because of, people who love beer, trading and sharing and stuff. And it's really cool. I love it.
Peter, what are the beers that are bringing people through your door these days?
I'm sure I could look at like our POS and figure out what sells the most, but we have this cool thing that I like to do, which is that each location has its own identity, has its own soul. What I never wanted to be was some like franchised model of Monday Night Brewing. So outside of the core beers, we will, if those locations have breweries, we'll brew unique beers for it. And if they don't have their own, certain states have different laws. I don't like creating new breweries in places that I don't have to, because that's a nightmare. So we'll actually brew beers in Atlanta that will be like on our 10 barrel that will be exclusively for Charlotte. You won't see them anywhere else. So I love that litmus test of figuring out what a different community wants, and then using them and like taking some of the background analytics. Unfortunately, Untapped's still a thing. Yeah, we all
usually,
go poop. That's what I look
there's
at.
like
it.
booze at that point. So like, good,
Yeah.
good on you for being. No, you don't have to. I'm just saying.
I mean,
good on you for the
as a
restraint.
business owner, I look at everything. Like, why wouldn't you? It's. I don't have to pay for that data. That's cool. But no, I mean, really, it's just I like to create different things for different communities for different reasons. I mean, there's been so many beers that we thought about killing that we go and we introduce it to a new community and it becomes like our best-selling beer, and you're like, wow, that whole state made that brand work. And so I just kind of grew from this idea that Atlanta's our home, but it can't be the testing ground for everything.
Sure.
It really can't be. And the more that we try to just figure out beers for that market, the more that we found ourselves just kind of scratching our heads. Then we started just releasing different things in different areas based off of like, just once again, looking at the data of what was working, why it worked. I like to create things for the people that support us.
Yeah.
If you're coming and you're spending your money, I should damn well enough be like, okay, why are you spending the money? What can we do to make your experience better, and how can we get you here more often? Because if we honor our business, then I can honor my people. But if we don't do that, then we all know what happens.
Tom, tell us about your barrel-aged stout program.
Well, we just found a new adjunct, lactose. Have you guys heard of it?
All right, so what Jeremy and Peter are talking about with various things, right? I mean, you're just doing traditional lagers, and I don't mean just in a negative way kind of thing, but when you're getting the seltzer crowd in, when you're getting the IPA crowd in, along with the lager crowd, along with the kettle sours and everything else in between, and then people walk in and it's just lagers, like it's working for you. Do you still get the feedback in this day and age where it's like, yeah, but like I really wish you had XYZ? Like, does that still happen? And do they then understand with the diversity that exists in beer, in breweries these days, that like you're a good thing as opposed to, not?
Yeah, I think we definitely still get that. Thankfully, now we're 4 years old, so most people who walk into our tap room know what they're getting, but we do have a pretty large sign on the side of our building that's visible from the main commuter rail out. So we do still attract people who just see our name and don't really know anything, and walk in, and literally had a guy walk in and on his way up to the bar, "I'll take your finest IPA." And
what's your strongest? Yeah.
We definitely get that. I think an area that we didn't anticipate, but I think we've found a way to sort of work around it, is private events in the tap room. A lot of those corporations or companies that want to hold events at breweries, think, at least initially, like more variety is better. So they'll ask us for a menu. It's like, well, clearly you haven't even looked at our website yet. But all we offer is lager beer. And we've had some pushback, like, oh, well, we have a bunch of people who like IPAs or who like stouts or whatever it is. And we just remind them that it's a business event. And if they don't want to deal with like really super drunk people, we're a great spot because our highest ABV is, well, right now our Oktoberfest is 6%, and that's huge for us.
Sure.
But everything else is lower. So, like, if you want people to just have a good time, sip on beers for the few hours that you have an event, we're the spot. And if that person who likes IPAs, ask them if they ever go to a backyard party and the only beer that's offered is a High Life, are they going to say, I'm not having beer? No.
Right.
They're going to drink that High Life. So, same deal with us.
I want to switch gears a little bit, and this is sort of a jump ball because we're in this setting right now where it's a lot of brewers, like we're industry people, journalists, etc., and we go to a lot of these things. We're at a lot of these things often together, and there can be late nights and early mornings and everything in between. And when you're talking about 120 hours a week, when you're talking about payroll, when you're talking about like keeping the business open and going. Where are you putting your thoughts these days on the work-life balance between health and success and the business and everything else? Because I think for a long time it wasn't necessarily something that was openly talked about, but it's, we need to be taking care of ourselves always a little bit better. Go drink water right now, everybody.
With malt.
Yeah. Fermented, go drink some fermented water. But that's the thing, right? It's just sort of this balance of thinking about maintaining a positive outlook on life while also the struggles of small business and beer and everything else in between. And Peter, I saw you pick up your mic first.
Yeah, this is actually really top of mind for me. Everyone has their own equation, right, of what they're trying to solve and when they're trying to solve it by. I got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. I really love being a dad. I have an amazing wife, and both her and I are complete masochists. We've started 3 new businesses in the past year and a half, and I like to believe that right now I'm in my sprinting phase, and I want to keep sprinting. I want to run as fucking fast as I can for as long as I can so that at some point I don't have to jog. I want to be able to spend meaningful time with my family. What up? Another beer. So for me, like, I know that it's a very important question. I've been luckily in this industry for almost 2 decades to where I have prioritized my mental health, not first, but I never monetized my career. Sorry, I never monetized my vice. Drinking's never been my go-to thing. And I have a respect for it. And I think that anyone that wants to be successful has to really respect it. Because if you don't, you get lost in the sauce. But I don't know. I'm not trying to work forever. I work to live. I do not live to work. And I'm really hopeful that our communities and the businesses and the risks that we take will pay off to one day where I can actually just really enjoy the things that I actually enjoy. And if anyone here enjoys work, like, do not holler at me. We will disagree about a lot of things.
Jeremy's giving you side eye right now, where it's just
Not at all. But I did. I mentioned that I worked too hard previous, and I had 2 of my daughters were born during harvest when I was a winemaker, and we had home births, and so I made it home to help deliver a baby, and then 8 hours later I was back in the vineyard picking grapes and making wine. And I have some regrets around that. But right now, having my own company, I do have some power that I'm able to take back. And, part of wanting to start a company and wanting to be the owner and the boss and have everything on it was, to help build the lifestyle that I want to build and use the business to help me do that. And I have a really great example, like just this week. My daughters and my wife and I, we all flew to Maine. We've been on the mid-coast of Maine all week. And then my wife and I drove over here for the festival this weekend, and we're going to drive back to Maine and finish our family vacation. and then I'll go home. And it's like I got the business part of it done, I got the family time, and I got an experience that, quite honestly, I never would have gotten if I didn't meet Jeff and Stu in Paso this last June, and they invited me out here, and they're like, will you come? And I'm like, if you invite me, I will come. And not only did I, like I said, I turned it into what it needs to be, but also I checked some extra, I guess, some dad points on this trip.
Yeah.
So
that is success.
I love that. But Tom, so I know you're sort of in that same boat, but I want to change that question around on you a little bit, where the three of you as owners and thinking about your own work-life balance, are you also now thinking about the people that you're employing and giving them similar experiences? Or, because it's nice if you're at the top and you can be like, all right, I'm going to go off to Maine for a week and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But this industry has been, you burn it at both ends all the time. And if the folks that are working the tap room this weekend get burnt out, then it's going to be harder. So are you thinking about not just your work-life balance, but the folks that are also within your walls?
Yeah, actually, I would say that I was, for a while, putting others before my own health, constantly keeping that top of mind. And this is a topic near and dear to me because just this summer I suffered a back injury because I also still make the wort and do brewing in addition to running the business, and totally just overdid it. And as a father of two young kids, 3 and under, that really sucks when you can't move for a few weeks.
Yeah.
So, and that was a result of so many things over the last 4 years, but definitely also just kind of picking up the slack of from places that were left by our own employees, by my own fault. Constantly saying oh yeah, I can take care of this, care of that, because I was pretty reluctant to give up some control. I would recommend to anybody, don't wait till you have a traumatic injury to finally let go of some stuff, because that's a bad path to go down.
Yeah.
I would much rather, I would recommend everybody let go a lot sooner than that. And so we've, thankfully we've hired some incredible people who have totally bought into our brewery. And even when I was injured, it served as a lesson for myself that, wow, we've managed to foster a really good work environment here that I can actually let go and things can still keep going. So yeah, I think focusing on making sure that then that doesn't happen to somebody else that you rely on is probably pretty important, and that's definitely something that we constantly keep top of mind.
This isn't where I wasn't planning on going on this, and we'll open it up to a question in just a question or two in just a minute. But that sort of unsolicited advice of don't wait, and all that. Peter, what's unsolicited advice you want to give to either other brewery owners, brewers in the room, or drinkers these days? And then Jeremy, I'm going to ask you the same question afterwards.
That's a really wide question. I don't know. I have a lot of unsolicited advice. That's the love language of the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is IRL, as the kids say. So yeah.
Be careful who you give your best to. Just like any relationship, be careful who you give your greatest contributions to. If you're going to do it for anyone, do it for your family, do it for yourself. A lot of people prey on the passionate. And on top of that, if you're a creator, take care of yourself, because everyone's going to try to just bleed you dry. Creatives obviously suffer from a lot of substance abuse and mental health issues, and you got to be really tough to be a creative. You have to be vulnerable. You got to be brave. There's a lot of shit that goes with it. So take care of yourself. I have personally found that as someone that did not found a brewery, I just worked at the right place with the right people, and they gave me equity over years and made me an owner, and I'm so grateful for that. But at the same time, you said it, you bust your ass to get there, and I luckily gave my best to good people, and they honored me for that. And now I have the ability to go start my own businesses because of what I've learned and the resources that I've gained, and I am completely locked in around the idea that I'm going to just go pay it forward. I'm going to do the same damn thing that someone did to me. When I find someone that is great, even when looking at hiring people right now, I'm offering equity right off the bat. I'm like, yeah,
It's incredible.
Come join this, because I believe that if you actually get someone from the jump, anything that someone builds, obviously there's ways of like doing equity where you can invest over time, but like I believe in buy-in. I will offer you buy-in. If I'm going to take the risk of hiring you, especially for the new businesses, I want people that are going to ride or die with me. I love that about our industry. Is that there's a lot of people that will ride or die for you, even for like the shittiest paycheck in the world. It's crazy. The amount of good people, the amount of great people that are in this industry that could be changing the world in so many different ways, but yet they're dedicated to making your life taste better. Like, fuck. That's amazing. So I want more of that. Yeah. And
that's the sound of everybody in this room printing resumes right now to give to you, myself included.
Yeah, what up? This is where I'm starting, guys. This room right here. Investors, maybe you. My wife is leaving. She's like, oh fuck.
Jeremy, what's the unsolicited advice that you have for folks?
Slightly different tangent, but I truly believe our front of house staff is. Kind of the all-star in our company. I think beer quality I think our beer quality is great. I think we have a wonderful tap room that's well appointed and super, super clean and fun to be at. But I mentioned earlier how I've met, I might have exaggerated when I said 20, but I've met, a handful of people here that have had our beer. It would be an absolute travesty if they made their way to Southern California and went to our tap room and were treated terribly, didn't have a good time or didn't have a good experience. So I think one of the things that makes me pretty prideful about the brand that we've built is when I do meet people that have been to our tap room, they're always talking about the staff, how nice these people were. Maybe they met my wife who tends bar there. Maybe they met one of our other partners there, or just our staff in general. And I think us like leaning into that as we grow. We have one tap room now, but we want several more. And I think if we lose track of that, we're going to lose a little bit of our identity. And I don't think it's going to be very easy to get back. So I think taking care of your tap room staff, making sure that they're accountable, but that they're there for people and not necessarily for us. We don't hire beer people really. We hire people that don't know anything about beer because we want people that are easy to talk to and. So I think that's, again, it's a little bit different tangent, but I think it's really important, at least for our brand and personifying our brand.
I like that. Jeremy, Peter, Tom, thanks so much for doing this. But really, thank you to Schilling for this wonderful festival, this wonderful gathering of fellowship. Thank you to you guys for allowing us to do this.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you all back at 5 o'clock for the ingredients panel.
Thanks, John.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Next week, it's another conversation from Schilling focused on ingredients, and you won't want to miss it. Questions, comments, guest suggestions, you can do all of that by emailing me. It's John Holl. That's JOHNHOLL at allaboutbeer.com. A reminder, please go visit allaboutbeer.com. There you can check out the podcast page, the merch page, and read great new content, as well as the archives going back to 1979. You can also follow All About Beer on social media at All About Beer. And if you're interested in supporting journalism in the beer space, email us at info@allaboutbeer.com or go to patreon.com/allaboutbeer. Don't forget, All About Beer has a podcast channel. Search and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday, and the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And don't forget to check out probrewer.com each week for original articles from the All About Beer team. As for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.